No one expected much from Private Layla Arif. Fresh out of Earth's interstellar academy, she was assigned to the fringe world of Karen 9, a death world where survival rates were measured in minutes, not days. The planet was infamous. Gravity 3 times Earth's, acid-laced storms, and apex predators that hunted in silence and devoured with surgical precision. Even the seasoned alien warriors of the Alari Confederation avoided it like plague. She was just supposed to observe, record, report, not interfere. But that all changed on day 2. Something in the forest watched her. Something old. Something impossibly lethal. The locals called it the Shy then, the demon of the wilds. A silent stalker, unseen, unheard. It had ripped through entire Alari outposts in seconds, leaving nothing but blood vapor in its wake. No one had survived an encounter until Layla. She didn't run. She offered it food, and it sat, towering at 11 feet of muscle, sinew, and armor like hide. The Shy then crouched like an obedient hound at her feet, growling if anyone came near, protecting her, following her, bonded by some ancient instinct no one could explain. Overnight, the most feared death world predator became her shadow. The military command panicked. The Alari screamed witchcraft. The xenobiologists lost their minds. But Layla, she just called it Ash. What no one knew was that this wasn't random. The Predator had chosen her for a reason. Because Layla Arif wasn't just a human recruit. She was something else entirely. Something Earth had long forgotten, but the stars remembered. A genetic memory, buried deep in humanity's DNA. A scent, a posture, a presence that no predator, no matter how alien, could resist submitting to. She wasn't prey, she was apex. And now, with war brewing across star systems, with death world beasts stirring and ancient terrors waking, the galaxy would soon remember why humans, fragile, reckless humans, had once ruled not just Earth, but everything they touched. Like gripping sci-fi with badass human moments and loyal alien monsters. Then hit that like button, comment your favorite HFY trope, and subscribe for weekly sci-fi tales where humans prove again and again they're not just survivors, they're legends. Got a story idea? Drop it below. Don't forget to share this with your fellow sci-fi fans. Private Layla Arif didn't look like a hero. She was short, wiry, with a head of tightly braided hair and eyes too tired for someone barely 20. Her file marked her as average. Average scores, average strength, average combat rating. She wasn't chosen for glory. She was assigned to Karen 9 for punishment. Bureaucratic oversight. A dead-end post. Observe the wilds. Write a report. Don't die. But Karen 9 doesn't forgive mistakes. Within hours of landing, her unit had lost 2 members. One to a burst of acidic steam, another to something they didn't even see. Their corpses were gone. Only their armor remained crumpled like foil. The jungle was alive in the worst way. Pulsing, hunting, watching. The air buzzed with something wrong. They told her to stay in the safe zone. She didn't. Not out of courage, out of instinct. Something in the way the trees leaned, in the way the wind whispered, pulled at her. That's when she saw it. Ash. The creature didn't leap, didn't growl. It watched her. Intelligent eyes set in a brutal face. Claws like obsidian sides. It could have killed her 1,000 times, but it didn't. It stepped forward, sniffed the air, and sat. She offered it her ration bar, mostly as a last gesture of peace. It took it gently. That was the moment everything changed, because the jungle stopped watching and started fearing. Her team thought it was some quirk of nature, but then Ash followed her back to base, laid down outside her tent like a guardian beast. When a sergeant raised his voice at her, it snarled. When Alari scientists tried to sedate it, it vanished and reappeared inside the walls. No one knew how. The message was clear. Touch the girl, die screaming. Layla didn't understand it at first. Why her? Why now? But as Ash's loyalty grew, so did something else inside her. Reflexes sharpened, memory fragments surfaced, old dreams, older instincts. She didn't fear the jungle anymore. She ruled it, and soon she would learn. The bond between her and Ash wasn't just emotional, it was evolutionary. Layla Arif's first steps onto Karen 9 felt like stepping into the lungs of a beast. The air was thick, not just with humidity, but with something heavier, almost sentient. It clung to her skin, sank into her uniform, and tasted like rusted iron when she breathed. Around her, the rest of her unit shuffled out of the dropship with visible tension. The squad was a mix of species: 2 humans, 1 Alari tactician, a pair of Trekkan scouts, and a 4-eyed, shell-armored comms specialist from the Veil-TH race. None of them seemed thrilled to be there, least of all Sergeant Bran, who grunted and muttered about suicide postings under his breath. Their equipment was outdated, patched together from surplus and cast-offs from other commands. The environmental shielding flickered under the relentless acidic drizzle, and one of the Trekkans hissed as a drop burned through a weak spot in his armor. The mission brief had been vague: observation and data collection, no engagement, no interference. But everyone knew Karen 9 wasn't a planet for passive study. The entire surface was a death world classification Omega, so lethal even automated drones often failed to return. The gravity pressed down at nearly 3 times Earth standard, and the ecosystem was brutal in its efficiency. Everything lived by killing something else. Flora with retractable spines, vines that moved in response to sound, trees that released hallucinogenic spores the moment you got too close, and worse, the predators. Few had ever been recorded clearly. All anyone knew was that when something came hunting, it didn't leave witnesses. Within the first 4 hours of deployment, they lost Private Kim. One moment she was standing watched by the perimeter sensor relay. The next, she was gone, snatched without sound, without warning. Her rifle lay undisturbed, standing upright in the dirt like she'd never even touched it. The squad went on high alert, fanning out in a tight circle. Sergeant Brand barked orders, but even he was sweating behind his visor. The forest made no sound, no birds, no insects, just wind, and it moved wrong. Layla could feel it, not just around her, but through her, like the planet was exhaling slowly, deliberately. That night, Corporal Vera, one of the Trekans, vanished during a patrol sweep. Her comms cut out mid-sentence, replaced by a wet static hiss. When they found her helmet, it had been crushed, neatly, almost respectfully, placed back at the edge of the clearing. No blood, no body, just a message in silence. .by the second day, the squad huddled closer to the dropship, rotating watch in exhausted, paranoid shifts. The jungle didn't just kill, it studied. Vines shifted ever so slightly when they weren't looking. Trees changed color. Even the ground felt alive beneath their boots, pulsing faintly as if something below was listening. Layla sat by herself during her watch, eyes scanning the underbrush, pulse thudding like a war drum in her ears. She didn't feel fear the way the others did. Not exactly. It was something else. A tension that felt like familiarity, like recognition. The jungle was watching, but it wasn't looking at them. It was looking at her. On the fourth day, Layla was sent out on a scouting sweep with minimal gear, just a pulse scanner, an enviro mask, and a sidearm with a half-spent charge pack. The squad was stretched thin, morale fraying, and their commanding officer decided that covering more ground would yield answers. It was a foolish call, but no one argued. Layla moved alone through a stretch of twisted underbrush that looked more like scar tissue than plant life. The jungle was unusually quiet again, almost reverent, and she could feel that ever-present pressure in the air shifting. It wasn't just gravity. It was like the forest was holding its breath. Her scanner flickered uselessly, jammed by some unseen interference. She should have turned back, but something, an instinct she couldn't name, pulled her forward. She entered a clearing surrounded by trees that looked scorched black, their trunks gnarled and burned from the inside out. At the center of it stood something. Her brain didn't register it at first. It was too large, too still. It blended with the shadows, like a trick of the eye. Then it moved, just slightly, and her breath caught. The creature was massive, well over 3 meters tall, with limbs that seemed more like sculpted armor than flesh. Its body was covered in deep gray plating that shimmered faintly like obsidian under moonlight. It had no visible weapons, but every inch of it looked like it was a weapon, and yet it didn't move toward her. It didn't growl. It simply watched. Layla didn't lift her weapon. She didn't speak. Something primal within her whispered, "Don't challenge it. Don't posture. Don't pretend to be predator if you're not." Instead, she did something no training manual would have approved. She reached into her pouch and pulled out a ration bar. Carefully, slowly, she crouched and placed it on the ground in front of her, then backed away 3 steps. The creature tilted its head, eyes glinting with eerie focus. It approached not like a hunter, but like something curious. It sniffed the air, lowered its massive skull, and gently picked up the bar with 2 clawed fingers. Then its Saturday, its massive frame lowered until it rested on its haunches, much like a dog settling beside its master. No hostility, no threat. It just stayed. Layla blinked, stunned into stillness. Her heart pounded, but not from fear. There was something electric in the air, like recognition flowing through her bloodstream. The creature lowered its gaze in a gesture unmistakably submissive, and a tremor ran through her legs. It should have been impossible. This was a Death World predator, a legend among nightmares. It had slaughtered entire units of trained Ulari soldiers, according to classified files she wasn't even supposed to have seen. But now it bowed its head before her, calm and still, as if waiting for instruction. Something ancient stirred behind its alien eyes, something that remembered her. Layla whispered without thinking, "What are you?" The creature made no sound but blinked slowly, and she had the absurd feeling that it understood. She didn't run, she didn't dare, because deep in her gut, she realized this wasn't a chance encounter. This was a choice. And the predator, whatever it was, had chosen her. When Layla returned to base with the towering beast walking silently behind her, the perimeter alarms didn't even have time to sound. Ash, because that's what she had decided to call him, moved with a predator's grace. But his posture was relaxed, non-threatening. It didn't matter. The moment the guards on watch caught sight of him emerging from the tree line, Weapons were drawn, and panic surged through the outpost like a live wire. The Ilari tactician shouted orders in a harsh, clipped language, his face contorted with something between rage and terror. The rest of the unit formed a loose defensive line, though their hands trembled. Layla stepped forward, palms raised, trying to keep them from firing. "Stand down! He's not hostile!" she shouted, but her voice was almost drowned out by the rising tension. No one listened. The idea of a Death World predator casually strolling into their compound without tearing anyone apart was too absurd to process. It was Sergeant Brand who finally barked a command sharp enough to freeze everyone. He didn't lower his weapon, but he gestured for Layla to explain. Her words came fast and disjointed. She told them about the encounter, how Ash had not only refrained from attacking but had responded to her offering and followed her back like a guard animal. Brand's eyes narrowed. He didn't believe her. No one did, but none of them dared fire the first shot. Ash remained by her side the entire time, unmoving, but his eyes tracked every hand that drifted too close to a trigger. The first time someone raised a weapon toward her, a nervous Veil-TH scout reacting to a sudden movement, Ash responded instantly. He didn't roar or lunge, he simply moved. One moment he was beside Layla. The next he was standing between her and the soldier, claws inches from the Veil-TH's throat, posture low and coiled. The message was unmistakable. Harm her, and you die. The command center descended into chaos. Within hours, words spread across channels. A kill-class predator had been tamed by a human recruit. The military wanted Layla quarantined, questioned, and possibly court-martialed for breaching protocol. The Ilari were more direct. They demanded Ash be destroyed, citing ancient treaties and interspecies safety regulations. To them, he was not an animal, but a walking bioweapon, a legend of death given form. Their oldest records spoke of such beasts, of Death World spirits that answered to no one, much less humans. The presence of one under Layla's protection was nothing short of blasphemy. Meanwhile, the xenobiologists were in a frenzy. The lead scientist, a sharp-eyed Terran named Dr. Monroe, was practically vibrating with excitement. She argued that Ash represented a biological breakthrough on a galactic scale. This could rewrite our understanding of predator cognition, interspecies bonding, even evolution itself, she said, already trying to schedule non-invasive scans and behavioral tests. Layla refused. Every time anyone tried to get close to Ash without her consent, he growled low in his throat, a deep, vibrating sound that made bones tremble and instincts scream. After a while, even the boldest researchers backed off. Layla was assigned her own tent, set away from the others. Ash curled beside it like a sentinel every night, his eyes glowing faintly in the dark. No one tried to approach her again, not because of orders, but because fear had sunk its teeth into the camp. They didn't understand what Ash was, or why he had chosen her. But one thing had become terrifyingly clear. Layla wasn't just a rookie recruit anymore. She was the only thing standing between them and something far more dangerous than they could comprehend. In the days that followed, Layla changed, subtly at first, then with a clarity that was impossible to ignore. Her reflexes became unnaturally fast. She could sense movement before it happened, feel the shift in the air before a storm rolled in. Her dreams were filled with sounds and images not her own, flashes of running through the jungle on all fours, tasting blood on the wind, hearing the world in a spectrum beyond human perception. When she woke, she remembered details she shouldn't have known, migration patterns of local fauna, hidden predator dens, pressure points in alien anatomy. It wasn't knowledge she had learned, it was remembered, like muscle memory from a life she'd never lived. She didn't tell anyone. She didn't need to. They already looked at her differently now, half in awe, half in fear. Ash grew more expressive as well. Though he never spoke, he communicated in ways that transcended language. A tilt of the head, a low rumble, the way he shifted his body in response to threats. It all formed a kind of silent dialogue. When Layla would glance in a certain direction, he would follow her gaze. When she was tense, he became alert. When she relaxed, so did he. He was more than a guardian. He was attuned to her, synchronized on a level that went beyond even the closest human-animal bonds. And Layla, despite all logic, could feel him inside her mind, not as words, but as instinct, an emotional pulse that resonated in her core like the echo of some ancient pact. They were becoming something together, something the others couldn't understand. The first sign of danger came with the static. Communications across the base began to stutter. Long-range beacons failed. Drones vanished mid-flight. The jungle fell into unnatural silence again. Not the ordinary dead quiet of a predator's presence, but a suffocating stillness, like the planet itself was bracing for impact. Layla felt it before the attack began. She burst into the command center, hard hammering, shouting for them to arm every station. No one listened until the first blast hit. The outer perimeter was vaporized in a flash of white heat. Then the jungle erupted with movement, not from beasts, but from figures, Armored, fast, humanoid but not human. They moved like shadows with weapons that tore through steel. Unknown assailants, no insignia, no comms, just death. The base descended into chaos. Soldiers scrambled, firing blindly, shouting over failing comms. Layla moved without hesitation, weaving through cover like she trained for this very moment. Except she hadn't. She just knew what to do. Ash was a blur beside her, his body a living weapon. He launched himself into enemy lines, claws tearing through armor, jaws crushing limbs. He was unstoppable. Where Layla moved, he followed, covering her, guarding her flanks, striking down anything that got too close. The unknown attackers fell back, but not before inflicting heavy damage. Half the base was in flames. Several crew were dead, others wounded. But without Ash, they would have all been slaughtered. When the smoke cleared, Ash returned to her side, blood coating his hide, eyes bright and unafraid. Layla stood in the wreckage, uninjured, commanding respect not through rank, but presence. No one questioned her now. Not after what they saw. Not after she moved like a predator herself. One with the jungle and the beast that protected her. Whatever had attacked them wasn't native. It was sent by someone who feared what was happening on Karen 9. Someone who understood that the bond between Layla and Ash wasn't just unnatural. It was dangerous, and if left unchecked, it might change the balance of power across the entire galaxy. The medical base smelled of antiseptic and burned metal, the walls still scorched from the recent assault. Layla sat on the edge of a cot, bruised but untouched by enemy fire, while Ash crouched in the corner like a silent shadow, his golden eyes never leaving her. Dr. Monroe stood across from her, pale and trembling, not with fear, but revelation. In her hands was a data slate she couldn't stop staring at, the screen casting pale light on her wide, disbelieving face. This isn't possible, she murmured. Layla, your genome, it's not just unique, it's extinct, or at least it should be. Layla frowned. Extinct? What are you talking about? Monroe swallowed, pulling up the sequencing overlays. We ran your DNA through every archive we have, civilian, military, restricted, just to figure out if your bond with Ash was some freak mutation. But it's not a mutation, it's a design. Your genome carries markers for a phenotype we only found in archaeological remains from early spacefaring humans. Those who led the first waves during Earth's expansion age. You're what they call dominants. She turned the slate toward Layla. You're a genetic throwback to humanity's lost warrior class. The ones who didn't just survive on death worlds. They conquered them. The room seemed to shrink around her. That's not in any history book. No, because it was erased, Monroe said, her voice now a mix of awe and anger. Centuries ago, long before the modern Terran Union, the first human colonies stumbled onto apex predators. Creatures too dangerous to exterminate, too intelligent to ignore. So they didn't fight them. They bonded with them, not through training, through instinct, through biology. The dominants were rare, genetically engineered or naturally selected. We don't know which, but records say they could link minds with apex species, forming bonds so powerful that entire planets were tamed in a single generation. These humans became living myths, until the Federation purged the project. Why? Layla whispered. Fear, Monroe said bitterly. You were too powerful. You and others like you threatened centralized control. So they buried the past, destroyed the records, and bred the genome out of the population through forced selection. You were never meant to exist again, and yet here you are. Layla sat in stunned silence, while Ash gently stepped forward and placed one clawed hand beside her, as if to answer, as if he'd known all along. Something ancient stirred behind his eyes, and she felt the ripple of understanding pass between them again. Stronger now, sharper, clearer. This wasn't just chance, this was legacy. Her presence on Karen 9 wasn't an accident. The bond with Ash wasn't a miracle. It was the resurgence of something humanity had tried to forget. A partnership between predator and protector, encoded in blood and bone. Words spread quickly across the remnants of the base, not just of her genome, but of what it meant. The Dominion Protocol, classified and redacted across every galactic archive, was real, and now living again in a single recruit. Layla wasn't just a girl who walked with a monster. She was the key to an ancient power that had once made humanity untouchable. And across the stars, in the shadows of dead empires and secret halls, others were watching, some with hope, others with fear. But all of them knew the truth now. The dominants had returned. The news moved faster than light. Leaked recordings from the battle, DNA confirmations, classified history files torn open by whistleblowers and rogue archivists. Across the galaxy, the name Layla Arif became more than a person. It became a ripple through political systems, cultural memory, and military doctrine. Footage of her standing calm and composed beside Ash, the galaxy's most feared predator bowing at her side like a loyal beast, spread across every network. Some labeled her a messiah, others a mistake. But no one dared ignore what she had become. From the glittering towers of the Terran core to the shadowy war chambers of the Alari Dominion, one truth echoed louder than any debate. The dominants had returned. Civilizations that had once mocked Earth's primitive origins now scrambled to reevaluate centuries of revisionist history. Old records, buried in quarantine systems and redacted archives, were suddenly valuable beyond measure. Historians, biologists, strategists, each tried to stake a claim on the truth, on how humanity had once wielded power not through fleets or weapons, but through a bond older than civilization itself. The Dominion Protocol became the most searched term in the galaxy. Children wore replica visors styled like Layla's. Protests erupted across colonies demanding the declassification of expansion-age atrocities. And in darker corners of the galaxy, warlords and corporate syndicates began quietly offering bounties, not on Ash, but on Layla, because what she represented could not be bought or controlled, only feared. The Ilari were the first to fracture. Among their people, the story of the dominance was not new. It had lived in legend, in bedtime warnings and ancestral chants. To them, dominants were not just humans. They were apex spirits in flesh, creatures who walked among monsters as equals. For centuries, the Ilari had sworn that such beings were extinct, burned out by Terran cowardice and political shame. But now, Layla's existence demanded a reckoning. The Ilari High Council met in secrecy, torn between doctrine and opportunity. One faction, led by the warrior clan Vasarik, declared that an alliance with the living dominant could elevate the Ilari back to their rightful place among the stars. They called Layla the Reclaimer, and Ash, the Black Crown. To them, this bond was prophecy fulfilled. But not all Ilari agreed. The ancient sect of Blood Watchers, long silent, resurfaced with dire warnings. They remembered what dominants were capable of, not just taming predators, but becoming them. They feared that Layla would not stop at peace, that she and others like her, if they emerged, could reshape the galaxy through force and instinct. They demanded her elimination, calling her a genetic weapon wrapped in flesh, a ghost of Earth's imperial sins. Assassins were dispatched. Surveillance drones shadowed her every step. Whispered messages were sent to Terran Command: contain her or suffer the consequences. Amid the chaos, Layla and Ash remained on Karen 9, now declared a neutral zone under watch of a hastily formed interstellar tribunal. Soldiers were replaced with scientists, politicians with peacekeepers. And at the heart of it all, Layla stood like a storm waiting to move, not by her own will, but by the will of history catching up to her blood. She didn't ask for this. She didn't want to be a symbol. But Ash remained by her side, silent and patient, as if he knew what she had not yet accepted. This was only the beginning. The first strike came under the guise of diplomacy. A delegation ship, flagged with false peace codes and diplomatic clearances, descended toward Karen 9's orbit under escort. Layla watched from the cliffs near the eastern ridge, Ash at her side, every nerve in her body screaming before the first missile even left its pod. She didn't hesitate. She didn't wait for confirmation. The moment the ship's energy signature flickered unnaturally, she shouted into the comms, "It's a trap!" The sky cracked open seconds later, the ship unleashing a volley of kinetic rods meant to erase the outpost from orbit. Shield grids held barely, but the message was clear. Negotiation was over. The galaxy had chosen fear. Within days, other attacks followed, not from organized fleets, but from a coalition of Death World colonies and rogue militaries bound together by desperation. These were systems that had survived on brutality and isolation, who viewed Layla's return, and Ash's presence, as a shift in natural order. They didn't want balance. They wanted extinction. And so, a Death World coalition was born, forged in backroom pacts and blood rights, declaring war not on Earth, but on the concept of dominance themselves. Their first objective, kill Layla Arid. Their second, annihilate any creature that responded to her call. But they had miscalculated. Layla didn't command armies in the traditional sense. She didn't issue decrees from war rooms or hide behind fleets. She moved through the wilds, alongside Ash, like a phantom stitched from instinct and rage. And she wasn't alone. After the second assault, something changed in Ash. Something ancient and unsettling. One night, beneath the blood-red moons of Karen 9, he lifted his head to the sky and released a sound unlike anything Layla had ever heard. It wasn't a howl. It was a summons, a pulse, a deep, resonating signal that echoed through jungle, stone, and bone. Within days, the predators came. From the deepest parts of Karen 9's biowild zones, apex species emerged. Some thought extinct, others never documented. Enormous insectoid warstalkers that moved in hive formation, massive quadrupeds with hide like obsidian and teeth like rail spikes, flying serpents that blotted out the suns. And they didn't attack Layla. They bowed, not to her alone, but to Ash. He moved among them like a warlord and a brother. And Layla, with her dominant blood humming in her chest, felt their recognition as if it were encoded in her DNA. She didn't control them. She belonged to them, as they did to her. When the coalition fleet landed for a full-scale ground assault, Expecting to face outdated weapons and scattered Terran resistance, they were met instead with the fury of a living world. Death World predators surged in coordinated strikes, led by Ash and others of his kind, intelligent, strategic, devastating. Layla moved at the front, guiding defense squads with precision that outmatched AI generals. Every time she fell, Ash was there to catch her. Every time he weakened, she stood over him, shielding him with her body. They fought as one, not human and beast, but apex and apex. The galaxy watched in horror and awe as Death World after Death World turned, not against Earth, but for it. Other dominants began to surface across fringe systems, their dormant genetics awakened by the broadcasts of Layla's battle. Ancient instincts long buried stirred in bloodlines forgotten by time. Humanity, once feared for its machines and politics, was now feared for something far older, the ability to unite what should never have been tamed. And at the center of it all stood Layla and Ash, symbols of what had returned. Not just a forgotten history, but a future no empire had prepared for. A future where the deadliest creatures in the galaxy didn't just serve humanity, they followed it. The war raged across star systems like wildfire, uncontrollable and unstoppable. What began on Karen 9 spread to jungle moons, lava-choked worlds, and frost-covered spheres where no human had walked in centuries. Layla led from the front, not through orders but through presence, her figure now recognizable across every battlefield as the one who ran beside monsters. Each planet they defended became another stage in a growing myth. Layla Aerith, the dominant, and Ash, the first apex, turning death worlds into strongholds. The predators didn't just follow anymore, they organized, adapting strategies, recognizing commands through silent gestures and emotion-bound impulses. Layla was the bridge between them and humanity. She no longer feared her instincts, she trusted them. Her transformation was complete. The woman who once hesitated before her first drop mission was gone. In her place stood a warrior bound not just by blood, but by legacy. Her movements on the battlefield became more than tactical. They were ritual, something embedded in the ancient code of the dominants. She could feel the flow of battle before it began. She sensed life, death, betrayal, even ambushes through the pulsing awareness she shared with Ash and, increasingly, with the other apexes. Some of them began forming bonds with humans now, tentative, uncertain, but it was happening. The old world was rising again, but not all accepted the return of that power. In the final stage of the war, rumors began circulating of arrival. An alien dominant, born not of Earth, but from a divergent evolutionary program on the planet Scifi-HFY, where another ancient race had once tried to master apex bonding. The subject was known only as Veilzar, a humanoid hybrid of Alari and something far older. He had bonded with a being the Terran archives could barely classify, something serpent-like and shadow-bound, capable of phasing between dimensions. Where Layla represented harmony between human and beast, Veilzar embodied domination. His bond was not of respect, it was of control through fear and pain. His predator didn't follow, it obeyed. The final confrontation took place on the twilight world of Ceres 11, a collapsing terraformed planet with gravity spikes and magnetic storms. The Death World Coalition had made their last stand there, fortifying a citadel powered by planetary vents and shielded by black market tech stolen from dozens of species. Layla led the charge with Ash at her side, both cloaked in battle scars, both shining in the eyes of predator and soldier alike. As her forces breached the citadel's core, Veilzar descended, wreathed in black mist and accompanied by his monstrous serpent, its eyes gleaming with unnatural hatred. They met on a jagged ridge, while the armies clashed below, predator versus predator, dominant versus dominant. Veilzar mocked her, called her a relic of a failed experiment. He spoke of taming the galaxy through submission, of using fear to crush resistance. But Layla didn't respond with words. She let the bond speak, let Ash growl low and deep, a sound that vibrated through the stone beneath their feet. The final battle was not one of brute force, but of balance, instinct against tyranny, symbiosis against coercion. In the end, Veilzar's power faltered. His serpent turned wild, breaking the unnatural leash he'd bound it with. Layla stood firm, hand on Ash's back, her mind open, her blood alight with the song of her ancestors. When the strike came, it was clean, swift, final. The bond between Veilzar and his beast shattered, and with it, the last threat to what Layla had built. As the battlefield quieted and the dust settled, Layla stood tall under the broken sky, surrounded by apexes who bowed, not in submission, but in respect. Her journey, from a human recruit to the rebirth of an ancient force, was complete. And somewhere deep in the galaxy, others felt it too. The dominants had returned, and this time, they would not be erased. The galaxy had never seen peace forged in such primal fire. In the wake of Veilzar's defeat, the Death World Coalition collapsed, not through annihilation but exhaustion, both of blood and belief. Their leader surrendered not to soldiers or treaties, but to the undeniable truth etched across every battlefield. The old order was broken, and something new had taken its place. The predators of legend now walked in harmony with humans, not leashed but respected, not feared but followed. From the ruins of war, representatives of dozens of systems convened, some reluctant, some desperate, others simply curious. What began as whispered negotiations became something far greater. The first interstellar accord centered not around a superpower or weapon, but a person, Layla Arish. She stood before the council not in polished armor, but in the same worn, scorched gear she had led battles in. Ash remained behind her, ever silent, his presence enough to silence entire chambers. There were no threats in her voice, no boasts in her bearing, only truth. She spoke of survival, of coexistence born not of treaties but of instinct. She offered peace not as surrender, but as evolution. The old galactic hierarchy, where predators were hunted, humans were isolated, and apex worlds were ignored, would no longer stand. In its place would rise something fluid, something resilient. A new alliance of species who understood that nature's fiercest strength was not destruction, but balance. The council agreed, not unanimously, never that, but decisively. A new force was established, the Apex Concord, a hybrid peacekeeping and research initiative made up of elite human soldiers, bonded Apex creatures, and volunteers from allied species. Its mission was clear: prevent another war, protect Apex ecosystems, and investigate the buried legacy of the dominance. And its leader could only be one person. Layla didn't seek the title, but she accepted it, not out of pride, but duty. She knew what her presence meant now, what her bond with Ash had reignited. The past had returned not as a shadow, but as a torch. Ash never left her side. Others asked why he stayed, what kept a creature of his intelligence and might bound to a single human. But those who had seen them fight, who had heard the unspoken silence between them in battle and council alike, understood. Their bond had surpassed even the ancient instincts that first connected predator and protector. Ash wasn't just loyal. He was devoted, not as a beast to a master, but as a partner to the only being who had ever truly understood him. Where she went, he followed. Where she led, he watched the horizon. And when she slept, he stood guard, not out of command, but love in the purest and most primal form. Together, they became symbols of the new age. Not rulers, not gods, but reminders of what had been lost, what had been rediscovered, and what the galaxy could become when fear was replaced by understanding. Peace had never looked like this before, and yet, to all who saw them, it finally looked right. And so, the legend of Layla and Ash was no longer just a story whispered in the shadows of forgotten worlds. It became the heartbeat of a new era. An era where humans and predators walked side by side, not as enemies or masters, but as equals bound by trust and shared destiny. The galaxy had witnessed the rebirth of an ancient power, a force that transcended fear and division, reminding all that true strength lies in unity. As stars shifted and new worlds awoke to possibility, one truth remained clear: where Layla leads, the fiercest predators follow, and together, they forge a future no darkness can undo. If you've enjoyed this journey into the heart of humanity's forgotten legacy, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more stories that bring the wild and the wonderful together. Your support fuels the next adventure.